Alright, broadcast has officially started, but you, you don't have to start now. You're 10 minutes early, so.
Yep. No, that's all good. Am I still audible, by the way? I'm probably just going to
Yeah,
swap to voice activation.
I
Because,
mean, you're audible on my end.
Alright, sounds good.
Let me send you the link. When recording comes. Yeah, so if you want to have an early pre-talk, go ahead. Yeah. Are you going to be on AV duty? Okay, thanks. I'll be doing camera work. And who knows, I might be doing the little thingy thing after this stuff. I assume you do have a Q&A segment. So that will be easy.
Yep, I do.
I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, still plenty of time, but stream is going. I'll just make sure to cut off this part, you know. Hama, what was the command for the one-off that Block made for like hiding admin op stuff? Hiding like specifically the operator like actions. Oh, with server messages. I'm not seeing server messages in. I'm not seeing it. I know I have like the mod installed. Oh, it's hide server messages. Thank you. There we go. That should prevent server log spam on my end. And it seems we have people filtering in. Yeah. I'm actually not feeling too tired right now. I have a lot of like a little physically exhausted, but like mentally I'm doing pretty good.
Do you mind if we do some like headphones tests and see if mine are working when I'm far enough away?
I mean, everyone can. If everyone wants to do a test, we can do tests right now.
Yeah.
I can A/B test if you want. Is somebody checking things?
I don't know what exactly we need to test, but if there's anything you do want to test, go ahead and test. I won't be the one to stop you. How are you going to be serving drinks?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Mapping wells is starting in about 4 minutes. And this is an audio test.
Get me a sidecar on the rocks. I just say things. Just give me something with alcohol in it. God knows this part's gonna get cut from any important uploads. Give me water like the past.
Give me
Uh,
the strongest thing you have.
okay, Jay, who was it during my presentation back in like 23 who was giving me water every single time? Whoever that was, I commend them. Worst part is I won't even be able to fully enjoy my drink because I'm going to be in spectator mode. Just gonna.
Anybody want to do the thing where
I'm
a
going.
giant message appears on screen?
Okay, what do you want the title will be?
Mapping wells is starting in 2 minutes on the stage? That's too long. It's gonna clip. I don't know what to tell you.
I can read that.
Alright. It's in 2 parts, but it'll work.
I think it gets the point across. I think that's the point of it. It's just to get the point across, and it gets the point across.
Can I have the strongest thing you have?
Double it.
Nothing.
Give them 2. I wanted the sidecar on the rocks. I think I might have been a little bit too strong. You know what? Save my sidecar on the rocks for my impromptu. Alright. Crispy, I assume you are ready to start any moment now, officially.
Yeah, I'm gonna roll. I'll turn
do
the
you-
mic on. and
May I
start
hit
rolling.
may I hit the title?
May you hit the title? I'm gonna wait for the clock to tick over to 0 and then go for it.
Give me a holler when it is. 'Cause I'm starting to have, I feel like I'm gonna have fun with doing titles if that's my role for a little bit.
What do you mean by doing titles? Are you like typing it into the like?
It's a command. Slash title.
Oh, okay.
I made my one and only bucket plugin is a plugin that like does titles for us or on first join.
And that's the hour. Go for it.
It started.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out to Blanketcon 25. How we doing? Shoutouts if you were here at Blanketcon 2023, where we also talked about one mod for like an entire hour. Hell yeah. No, yes, this should be fun. There are 2 very terrible things about virtual stage events. The first one is that it is deathly quiet. It is deathly quiet running through the voice chat system, and I don't want people to talk back to me because unfortunately it is not the same thing as low murmurs. They're very distracting. So in exchange, if I say anything mildly interesting, please give me some wahoos and yeehaws in the chat. You know, just something. Jump up and down and punch. Just it'll be alright. The second problem I'm going to run into is the thing about in-person presentations is that if you get stuck on something, you can just kind of pause and charismatically drink water. So I've brought a hot bar full of water to solve that problem. Because when I take a drink at my desk, I'm going to take a drink in the game, and then it's not going to be a confusing pause, and you think that my mic is broken. All right. Now that that's out of the way, let's do Mapping Worlds. So, Mapping Worlds is, I guess, our journey through the map mod ecosystem. and it's kind of about the happy accidents that we made along the way. Let's go. So, first thing is we have to talk about procedurally generated game maps. So, implementing maps for procedurally generated games is just hard. It's just a genuinely hard problem. So, maps for most games are usually either hand drawn, set up as a texture, and then they're shipped with the game. They're just drawn once. Even in something like, I don't know, Skyrim, right? It's a mesh that they've taken of the entire world and they've kind of crushed it down to be lower poly, and then they've decorated it and they just ship it once. But unfortunately, with Minecraft, the developers have no idea what the world that you're going to be looking at is going to look like, and so they have to implement, these detailed kind of scanning algorithms, right? You have to take the full-size Minecraft world, and you have to kind of look at it from the top down and start to scan downwards through all the air in the sky until you hit the ground, until you hit, meaningful colored blocks and go, okay, that's a pixel, that's a pixel, that's a pixel. And that's kind of how vanilla maps work as you explore them. So, yeah, by comparison, procedurally generated maps are really hard. And for this reason, partially for this reason, I think this is why vanilla maps are quite limited in scope. There's not a lot going on with those. So a lot of people turn to map mods instead. And you got some options with map mods. You got browser maps where you usually install those, on a multiplayer server, and then you can go look at the map of the entire world, in a browser and kind of poke around. And you've got, vanilla style maps like, the vanilla map item, stuff like Antique Atlas and map atlases are like this, where you have something that's installed on the client and the server, and the map data is stored on the server, and then you kind of view it on the client, etc. And then the third and the most popular and featureful type of maps that we have, I think, is the client-side maps. So you install the mod on your client. As you explore the world, the map is populated with everywhere you've been. You don't have to make new items. And really importantly, you can use these on vanilla servers. So you can go and join, because tons of people are using vanilla servers, you can join your favorite vanilla server, map mod, and then suddenly it's much more easy to navigate. And people are big fans of that, which makes sense. And a lot of them have custom waypoint creation as well. And of course, the third thing, unlike browser maps, you can view it all in-game. The extra detail with these, most browser maps tend to be open source. Some of the vanilla style maps are open source. All of the popular client maps are closed source. So the most featureful maps, the most popular types of maps are all, not closed source specifically, but all rights reserved licensed. So yeah, overall, not only is procedurally generated game mapping hard, but client map mods, the most featureful type of map mods, are hard because there's no knowledge base to work from. It's very hard to make these. Cool. So here's a case study of a specific map mod. We're going to talk about Antique Atlas. So Antique Atlas has this incredible art style. Like, you look at it and you're just immediately blown away, right? And obviously, in order to create like an art style like this, where everything is broken down into these awesome pixel art tiles and there's, auto tiling going on the map, it takes a ton of work, right? And having to implement this extremely fancy renderer and implement the logic that's common to all map mods, like scanning the map like that, that algorithm I mentioned earlier, and, setting up the save data, making sure it's not too big. It's prohibitively difficult. There's, again, there's no knowledge base. When Antique Atlas was getting made, you couldn't just go, oh, what's the most popular map mod? Let's steal half of their stuff and then go from there. And, it just makes me wonder, like, how many skilled modders and artists have been scared away from making something like Antique Atlas, right? Making something really cool and unique because they have to implement common backend logic. So, this is how those two problems, right? How procedural game maps being hard to implement and there being no knowledge base for, in-game maps affect like real projects. So like Antique Atlas, right? One sec. So this presentation is about Surveyor. I made Surveyor by mistake, and I made it by mistake by liking Antique Atlas a little bit too much. So, this is how this kind of went. I like Antique Atlas a lot, and I was maintaining a mod pack, so I started by porting it to a new version. I had a mod pack on a new version, I wanted Antique Atlas in that version. Awesome, let's go, let's put in the port, let's PR it. Great. I had specific designs in mind for my mod pack where I didn't want it to like add any items, so I tweaked it slightly as well. I made a tweaked version where there's no items and it's just the map that you can view by pressing like the M hotkey. Cool, awesome. Then the ports that I made that I put PRs in for got stale. I think they were sitting there for like 8 months, maybe a year. And I guess pop quiz on what happens when you have a PR port sitting there for 8 months to a year. Apparently, somebody steals it and puts it on Moderates. So I think that was kind of the kick in the pants that we needed to finally go, okay, maybe we should go and actually try and be the new maintainers of this mod if people are so excited about it that they're willing to try and nick our stuff. Well, our stuff of other people's stuff and go and put it on Modrinth and CurseForge. That all got taken down, but that's irrelevant. I was motivated, so okay, why don't we take the stuff I'd already tweaked, make more opinionated tweaks to it, make improvements to the GUI, and release it on Modrinth, which, awesome. And I'm kind of iteratively going through this process of looking through different parts of the mod and seeing what I feel like I can improve, because this is just one of the things that I like to do with mods that I really like, right? And so I thought client-side map mods are more popular for a reason. You can join vanilla servers. It's a genuine feature. So why not try and make Antique Atlas, which I think is awesome and everyone should try, client-sided, right? So that more people can see it, more people can try it out and see what's so cool about it. It turns out there is something that is quite difficult about doing that, and there's a reason it hadn't been done already, which is that, as you can probably see from the previous slide, Antique Atlas relies on structures. Those are the individual structure parts of a village being displayed there. And if you don't know this, structures only exist on the server. They do not exist on the client at all. So not only that, but the entire, common backend logic of Antique Atlas is all written with like mixed side, both, server and client, all mixed around in mind. It's written with items in mind, and it's all just one big soup. So in order to make Antique Atlas client-side, which I wanted to do, we needed to decouple the rendering from all of the world data. So, I drafted a solution. Antique Atlas is split into, a front end, which handles all of our rendering, and our back end, which is responsible for all of the world data. So the backend generates the data that is useful to map rendering, and additionally the backend can run on the server, which gives it access to the structure data, and the front end is just responsible for rendering whatever data the backend gives it. So we look at this for a little bit, and some of you in the audience might notice something a little bit interesting. And the something that's a little bit interesting is that I kind of realized that I'd almost made a generalized map backend, just a backend for any map mod. And so, if you have a backend for any map mod that implements that common backend logic that you have to have for every map mod, then that would solve the two big problems that we've just discussed. That, number one, procedural game maps are really hard to implement, right? Because we've implemented them once, right, in one backend. And then problem 2, right, the knowledge base is super limited, and we can, solve that by actually publishing this kind of map backend, as open source. So, I thought, okay, we're so close, right, to this thing that would actually solve something about the Minecraft map mod ecosystem. So at that point, like, why not, right? Like, let's just go the extra mile and actually make this half-baked replacement backend to Anti-Atlas a generalized map backend. So, okay, to be fair, almost a generalized map backend is kind of the key word there. So the data that the backend generates needs to be general enough for all maps, right? Like the data that it's generating and saving to the disk, it has to be not just chunks like Anti-Atlas wants, but it has to be, every single block. And then like the data handling for waypoints as well also needs to be generic enough to work for all maps. And so, okay, we've got to do these two things. And for giggles, while we're here, let's allow not just structures to be sent from the server to the client, to enable the thing that we want for Atlas, but for terrain and waypoint data to be sent from the server as well. So players, for example, you can see chunks that you've never visited before. When you join a server, you can just, you can see the whole map, kind of like you would with a browser map. So, cool. Maybe, just maybe, this is a thing that is possible to do. I'd like everybody to, in the audience, if you could just press the M key. Ta-da! So Surveyor Map Framework is a generalized map backend, and you are looking at a completely new Surveyor-powered map frontend called Hoofprint. Yeah, there it is. It's fun. Now that we're all sufficiently impressed by that, let's explore how Surveyor specifically empowers map mods like Hoofprint, so the map mods of today, and potential future map mods as well. So, for starters, the first thing we want to do is, making a map front end easier than ever, right? So, with Surveyor, you can make client-side map mods, you can make browser map mods, you can even make Patbox, if Patbox was listening, you can make purely server-side map mods with Surveyor. Surveyor is modular as well, so you can even turn off, the terrain scanner and use it for something like a compass or floating waypoint mod. So kind of like Skyrim. That box is gonna go wild. So something like the Skyrim quest compass, you could just use it for that instead of having a full map. And as a bonus, right, because Surveyor is handling all of the generation and saving of the save data, you can change map mods like mid-save, halfway through, an existing world save, and you keep your waypoints, you keep your explored area, because the map front end is only responsible for taking the data that the map backend passes to it, so that's Surveyor now, and just rendering it, right? Like it's the same every time because it's generalized. So 2 map mods are released already. So Hoofprint is actually clocks in at just under 800 lines of code. So we've got open source map mods with that little code as a front end, and so I think there's finally that knowledge base there that you can go and you can look at an open source map backend and you can look at an open source map front end and you can actually learn ways that map mods can work, right? And I think that's awesome. That's great. The next thing I've got is, one moment. I'm running out of real life water at my desk. I'm in creative, so I have infinite Minecraft water, but that's... Cool. Next thing is landmarks. So one thing that I noticed when I was reviewing existing map mods is that mod integration into map mods is really rare. And I think that's partially because most map mods are all rights reserved, right? So a big advantage of a generalized map backend like Surveyor, right, is if you want to display modded content on a map, like say, like you know how Create 6 recently added train lines to maps, right? If you want to display modded content like that on a map, you integrate with just Surveyor, not each of Surveyor's individual map front ends. So with the way we set this up, we've kind of taken this further. So we designed the system for waypoints and points of interest, which we call landmarks generically. So waypoints are the ones that players create, and points of interest being the things that the server declares, like lodestones, portals, and that kind of thing. So we call those all landmarks, and we've taken this further by having landmarks have entirely modular data. So each landmark has, up here you can see, individual bits of data, and the map front ends choose how to render each individual bit. So when you are, making a map front end, you're not deciding how am I going to render this train line. You're going, how do I render a landmark with a Bezier curve, right? You just one abstract thing to render on the screen. It doesn't matter who's giving you it. So, if you want to render a new type of portal on the map, you just say, hey, Surveyor, add a landmark called the portal at this location with glowstone as its icon. And you don't have to, have some special integration that is going to have to flow all the way through into every individual front end, because the front end already knows how to draw a landmark on the map with glowstone as an icon. It's just, it's already done. And so we hope that, with Surveyor, people can be genuinely excited about integrating with a map mod, which I don't think is, I think most of the time people dread that. So I'm really hoping. The next thing I've got is map sharing. This is the really flashy one that I think everybody notices right away. So, remember how I said how you could have, a server show you the entire map instead of just the map that you've already visited when you join, because the server generates stuff and it sends it. Well, we can do a bit better than that, because Surveyor actually tracks exactly where each individual player has been. They've tracked which chunks those players have seen, which means that two players can elect to, quote unquote, share maps with each other. And they'll see the same map area as the two of them explore, even if they, split very far apart. And it's, to be clear, it's not really sharing. The clients, generate their own map data as they explore, and the server kind of fills in the blanks where they would have the other one's map data with the server's map data. So no data is traveling up from the client here. And, as you've also noticed, I'm sure, this is the one thing everyone noticed, Surveyor sends the position and rotation of players that you're sharing maps with. So even from outside your render distance, often mini-maps have entity radars, outside your render distance, you can see the position of other players. So you can always know, where your friends are. And it's kind of part of the, I guess, the smoke and mirrors of the seamlessness of Blanketcon as an event now, which I think is awesome. So, I think this is the kind of fancy feature that you can get when you focus on making a map backend instead of having to make one out of obligation because you want to make a cool map frontend. And the last thing I want to talk about, speaking of focusing on making a map backend, I think that is the final feature, right? Is just focus. By taking the input of many skilled modders that would otherwise have their efforts split between like many different map mods, we can make map backend systems that are more performant, less buggy, more featureful, and just generally better. Like, I don't care if somebody rips me off in order to get to that end point, but I just want us moving. Because I feel like map mods have been kind of stagnating for a while, and maybe I'm the only person who feels that, but that's might be because I don't like the GUI of some of the popular map mods, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I'd really like to thank everybody who's collaborated with us on and around Surveyor so far. There's 16 people on the damn Modrinth page thank you section, and I really hope that there are people in the audience who are interested in getting involved as well. So yeah, that's actually the presentation. It's not actually that long. I expect to be sitting here answering questions for ages. So that's fine. Yeah, feel free to send in questions, especially about, if you're interested in add-ons, front ends, contributions, which things work and which things don't. You can also ask about specific implementation details of how it works, because I did not want to go into that much detail in the main parts of the presentation, because I think a lot of people's brains would turn off because it's annoying and complicated. Remember how I said it's super complicated? And then if anyone has specific questions about one of the map front ends, that's also fine. I will probably do those last, but I will answer them. Q&A microphone. All right. Cool. Do I just start pulling notes? All right. Great note to start. That was before the Q&A started. This one, also a joke one. Hold on, I'm gonna clear my hotbar if I'm gonna get through this many jokes. Okay, no, the queue is clear now. All right. Hama, does everybody know how the QA system works? Because I don't know. You just made a sign. Okay. Is it above me?
What is the most challenging thing when working on the framework?
Oh God. Okay. I think I've got two answers to that question, but I'm gonna try and keep them both short. The two things that I feel like I spent the most time hitting my head against the wall with was exploration, tracking, and sharing, just specifically what players should and shouldn't see when we have to network the data back and forth. It's just such a massive web of what players know about and what clients know about, and trying to unpick those two things. That was really complicated. The second thing that was really complicated was the actual terrain mapping, so the algorithm for how the terrain mapping works. And this is going to be an interactive answer, because if you open your map, and I need to remember what key it's on, I'm going to be slamming keys really quick. Oh my god. The second thing that was really complicated, as I look up what this key is, was actually setting up the way that the terrain scanning works. Because one of the things that I really wanted to have was, not just a map that works, but a map that works the same way that other maps work. So being able to actually see terrain in the Nether is one of the things that vanilla maps cannot do and don't bother to do. I wanted to be able to do that. I also wanted to make sure that there was, some possibility of being able to do cave mapping, because cave mapping is a great feature, but oh my god, is it complicated to implement. And effectively what we ended up having to do was kind of, when we scan each individual chunk, we kind of slice it into pieces, and for each of those pieces, we look at the kind of blocks that are important to the map. We call them floors. So we're kind of taking a flattened cross section of a bunch of different pieces of the chunk vertically, and then that way we are capable of being able to show caves, but not having a situation where if a chunk is too complicated, it will just have map data that is as big as the actual chunk data, because that's completely untenable. And then the thing that I had to add to that is if you have a full-size keyboard, if you will open your map screen and click page down, you can subsequently be impressed or horrified by the fact that there's a cave view in Hoofprint. There we go. I found what the control was eventually. Yeah, right? Cool. Yeah, I'll move on to the next question. We got another mic question, or do I take a note? Okay, here I have got a question that says, what is the design philosophy for viewing entities? So, Surveyor does not have an entity radar. Surveyor does not need to have an entity radar. Surveyor shares player positions and rotations, but they don't send. It doesn't send entire entities. It just sends the yaw, and it just sends the position, and it's only of players that are in your sharing group. On Blanketcon, on this Blanketcon server, we have global sharing enabled, which basically means that all players are considered to be part of the same sharing group, which is why you can see all players on the map. But like on like a PvP server, obviously you would share your map with just people who are in, your faction or whatever, and then you would only see them on the map. In terms of entity radar in general, we don't have any interest in sharing the location of entities outside of the render distance, but I can see how that would potentially be useful. Specifically talking about, we were talking about train tracks and how to render train tracks as a landmark. You could render trains. So I think at some point I will probably think about the concept of moving landmarks and whether that actually makes any sense. They probably will still be represented as landmarks because that's just going to be the simplest things for front ends to render. And it seems entirely possible. But it'll probably be special case to add-ons that say, I want to have a landmark that moves. This is my train. Here's it moving along. Rather than trying to have a system where people can see every entity on the map everywhere, because that sounds really scary. Cool. That's that one. Another note one. Why are so many map mods all rights reserved? Cool. So I have a real answer to this. They're not. So Antique Atlas is not all rights reserved. Like all of the browser maps that I found on Modrinth are not all rights reserved. It is just specifically that, if you try and get a client-side map mod for 1.20 or something right now, you'll get Zeros or you'll get Voxel Map, and all of them, both of them happen to be all rights reserved. I think the reason is just that map mods are hard to make, so there's not many of them, and it just so happens that the ones that do exist are all rights reserved. Part of that is probably that map mods are hard to make, and so you feel like you want to keep your own stuff because it's hard to make. Vicious cycle, I guess. Alright, nobody's up at the microphone. I'm gonna look. Server, hello. I have Trough's question here, but the note refuses to open. Yeah. Oh, you made a copy? Okay, yeah, alright. Thank you for the burger, whoever sent that through the note line. Is your mod all rights reserved? No, it's LGPL, and if somebody has a particular reason to want to not license their thing LGPL, talk to me about it. Also, both Surveyor, Hoofprint, and Antique Atlas are all LGPL. Can you elaborate more on how mods would add integration, specifically considering Create V6 as an example? It seems mods don't really get any control over how their stuff is shown. Yes, so that is one of the potential downsides to the way that landmarks work. So considering Create V6 as an example, so there's kind of two angles here. But there is some flexibility. So talking about the landmark system, the way I would integrate Create V6's train lines is I would start by going, Surveyor does not have a landmark component for, Bezier curves or whatever other kind of data structure you want to represent, like a curvy path on a map as. So the first thing I would do is PR Surveyor for a new built-in generic component for Bezier curves, or whatever they happen to be. And then once that's in, from there, in create, I would create, optionally depend on Surveyor, and if Surveyor is present, make sure that those landmarks get created when the train lines get created. What I would probably also do if you want more control over the way stuff gets rendered is you can register landmark component types as an add-on as well. So obviously, if you're making something like a curvy path that has no representation in Surveyor's landmark components already, you want to contribute that to Surveyor. But if you want to add in-depth data that is obviously mod specific, like if you want to say what the ID of the livery of the train is, right? So that map mods can display a texture of a train or a texture of a train track or whatever it happens to be, then you can register that component as the add-on. So, create goes, there's a new landmark component, it's for the type of metal that the train tracks are made out of, and this landmark is that type. And we, I think, currently don't have the fallback system implemented, but the way that it should work is basically, if one side has that registered and the other doesn't, then it will still accept that landmark, but it just won't deserialize that specific component. And then again, on the front end, it's like, okay, if the front end depends on, optionally depends on create, then it can understand that, track metal component, and it can choose to, expand the way that it renders specifically that component. So yeah, from there, in terms of getting more control over the way that stuff is shown, it's that you have a minimum level of good by using the built-in components, and then from there, you have the power to, contribute optional integrations to specific map mods to make them look better. It's down to their API at that point. Or obviously the map mods themselves can go, oh yeah, I want to make sure that this looks good this way. I hope that ramble gets enough across that there is some flexibility between, I guess, the lack of control and the control there. Yeah, there is always going to be a way to decently represent something, but if you want complete control over how something looks, you're still going to have to go to the map front end and its API, or contribute, an integration directly. Yeah, so we're really at a point where the data is always going to make sense, but it's not necessarily going to be completely custom. It's just that it's always going to make sense. Cool. What is the best way to update created maps in your opinion? For example, vanilla maps only update when you hold them. This one is funny. Because Antique Atlas, when we were rewriting it, we noticed that it had basically a timer after which it would refresh like tiles. So it was like, if a tile is more than like 6 hours old, regenerate it when you encounter it. And I didn't like that. I felt like that was kind of wrong. How Surveyor currently does it, and it's a bit overkill, is that whenever the server dirty saves a chunk, so when a chunk gets saved and the server says something new has been changed in the chunk, it will regenerate the Surveyor map data. So servers are very, very picky. You get to know when exactly new things have changed in the chunk, and so that means you can, perfectly match whenever a chunk changes, the server-side map data changes. Clients, it's harder. Basically what we've got is a setting. It's called lazy updating. When that's off, whenever you load a chunk for the first time, it crushes it into map data. The map data crushing is very optimized. We kind of put a lot of effort into ripping apart the normal vanilla functions in order to use, the kind of most raw version of them we possibly could, in order to make it as fast as it is. But if that's not optimized enough, we have this lazy chunk loading option, and what that does is it will only update the map data for a chunk if it detects that the amount of air in the chunk has changed, because that's something that chunks expose in Minecraft. They'll just tell you how much air they have. So it'll only run the scanning algorithm. It's detected that the amount of air has changed, which means you'll miss changes that are just swapping one block for another block, but it's cheaper. Yeah, that's how we do it. I don't know if it's the best way, but it's two good options. What challenges and changes are required for getting Surveyor on Minecraft 1.21.5 and beyond, especially with the upcoming visual changes? I have no idea. I have not even looked. Surveyor is currently in the middle of its 1.0 version, which is the version where we changed landmarks to be component based. It's also the version where we need to fix a memory leak that I've been told is not so much a memory leak so much as it is the pipe isn't even built yet. In that currently Surveyor loads all of the map data for a dimension at once, regardless of where you are in the dimension, which means that if you are on a 100-player multiplayer server and people go very far away, you will run out of memory on a 64 gig server. Ah! So yeah, we're currently working on 1.0, which is the landmarks update and also fixing the memory issue by having the map data on disk actually stream in and out, which is complicated and difficult, and we need help for that. Please. The other thing that this question says is, love the mod, especially how it looks thematically similar to a Minecraft treasure map. Antique Atlas has been out for years. It's been around since 1.6, I want to say, definitely 1.7. Please support Antique Atlas and Huntanif, who originally made Antique Atlas. Those textures are great, and I can't make anything like them. Recently, I've been getting a couple of textures done by Maple, Lumiscosity, which are also really good, so shoutouts to both of them. Any more questions from the... Oh, you know. Implementation question. Is there a way to force regenerate chunks in Surveyor? For example, regenerate all loaded chunks. It depends how deeply. If the chunks are loaded, you can, and you're on the client side, you just disconnect. If you're on the server side, you just save. That's usually the most consistent way to do it. If they're not updating, it's because lazy chunk updating is on and the chunks have not changed the amount of air count that they have. Beyond that, I would really like a way to do, you know, what like a chunk generator does and just run through all of the chunk save data and like generate the map data from that, because adding Surveyor to a very large existing world currently kind of feels a bit flat. You know, would be nice. Yeah, there's no way in-game to deliberately do the thing, but obviously you can trip disconnecting and reconnecting, and you can trip saving. So those are the two for client and server, respectively. Is that a hawk or an eagle in the logo? It is a hawk. Yeah, it's a hawk. I'm pretty sure I looked up references of hawks. Yes. Anyone else? Dun 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 dun. I think we're good. All right. Yep. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming out. I am very happy to be here again and hopefully be slightly more to the point and rambling less. I think the Switchy presentation went for like an hour and a half because I kept answering questions. So yeah, nice to see everybody again, and I'll see you in what is that, like 16 hours for when I'm gonna talk on stage next to Hama about Modfest itself. Peace.